Hello, and welcome to my presentation for the Quantum Leap Business Show. My name is Douglas Spencer, and we're going to talk about your brand and your messaging and the question that you're asked every single day, who do you think you are, that most organizations really can't answer. And if they can, they have trouble doing it consistently and in a way that really connects with the people most important to their success. So we're going to work on that. And this is how. First of all, we're going to talk about the question itself. How do you answer the question, who do you think you are? Who's asking the question, and how do you go about it? And then why does it matter? Why does it matter that everyone in your organization needs to understand how to answer that question in a consistent way? And then finally, we're going to help you find the answer. So we're going to help you figure out how, if you can't now, how can you figure out how to answer the question, who do you think you are? First, a little bit about me. My name is Douglas Spencer, and I am a Boston-based, in the United States. I'm a Boston-based branding and messaging strategy consultant. I've got lots of years of experience in both marketing and branding. Before I started my business, Spencer Brenneman, I was the global head of brand for Thomson Reuters, and I was very lucky to be a part of the bringing together of two brands, Thomson and Reuters, to form the then new Thomson Reuters brand. It was an excellent experience, and I cherish it to this day, and have learned a ton, much of which I'm going to try to share with you today. I've also written a book called Do They Care? The One Question All Brands Should Ask Themselves Continually. And you can find that on Amazon if you are so inclined. And contact information for me will follow, as well as ways to get in touch with me for follow-up questions that we can't do in this format, but we would have been able to do were we live. So let's get started. So back many, many years ago, there was a nightclub in Boston that I will never forget, had this sign when you walked in, where it said dress code, know who you are and dress accordingly. Well, I think that is brilliant advice, not only for who you are as a person, but it really makes sense for brands as well. Brands have to know who they are in order for them to present themselves in the right way, which is, basically what a dress code does. It helps you present yourself in a way that is accurate and authentic and in line with who you really are. So when it comes to figuring out, answering the question, who do you think you are? You have to know and dress accordingly. So who is asking that question? Who is asking the question, who do you think you are? So let's talk a little bit about that question, who do you think you are? And who is asking it? Well, let's start with the employees. I always love to start with employees because I believe you cannot have happy customers if you do not have happy employees. So they're all asking the question, who do you think you are to expect me to go above and beyond the call of duty? Who do you think you are to expect me to work for that much pay, to assume I want to work for you at all, and to care about some stranger's problems? And then here are those strangers, also known as your customers, they're asking you all the time, who do you think you are? Who do you think you are that I'm going to open up your email, that I'm going to listen to your pitch, that I'm going to pay a premium for your service? I'm going to talk to your work, talk about your work to others, and that I'm going to replace a vendor I've been working with forever. So those are the questions that you're being asked every single day. Who do you think you are? Well, one of the reasons that we have trouble answering that question is what I like to call, how I like to describe is we forget what they don't know. So here's a picture of David Sedaris, and he is this author. If you haven't read any of his books, I highly recommend it. They are hilarious. And in one of the books, and I could not find, I looked through all the copies of the different books I have, and I could not find the exact one, so I apologize for that. But he tells this awesome story of He's walking down a dark New York City street late at night, and he's not an imposing figure. He's self-described. He's very small and he's slight, and probably I don't know how tall he is, but he's not a very big, imposing figure. So he's walking down this dark street late at night, and there's a woman walking ahead of him, and all of a sudden she starts walking faster and faster and faster. And he starts thinking, uh-oh, oh my God, are we in trouble? Is there someone behind us? And so he starts walking faster, which causes her to start walking faster even more. And he's starting to get more and more upset and anxious because he doesn't know where he is. He doesn't know if he's safe. And all of a sudden she turns around and she takes out some mace and she says, stop, I have mace and I'm not afraid to use it. And he swings around, looks behind him, thinking that there's a mugger behind them. And then it occurs to him that she thinks he's the mugger. Now, he knows he's not a mugger, and it never occurred to him that anybody else would think that not everybody else knows he's not a threat. So we do this every day. We live and breathe our jobs, which makes us great at it. But unfortunately, we forget what's in here and just in here and what's out in the rest of the world. So we have to continually remind ourselves or ask ourselves, do people know what I'm thinking? Or what am I taking for granted that others obviously wouldn't know? Let's look again at your employees. So do your employees know about everything that you're doing, that you're planning for your business? Do they understand all the strategy? Well, probably not, nor do they need to know everything. They don't know what kind of investments you're going to make. They don't know what kind of competitive challenges you might be facing. They don't know if you're talking to someone about a merger or an acquisition. And again, that's okay, but you just have to keep in mind what it is they don't know so that you can message to them accordingly, so that you can answer that question, who do you think you are, that you might think you already are answering, but you're not. And then let's talk about your customers. Now, your customers obviously don't know the challenges you're facing. They don't know what kind of employment challenges you might have, what kind of overhead you might have, or new challenges you're facing, or what you plan to do with the business long term. And again, that's not necessarily all a bad thing, but you have to remind yourself of what it is that you do know that they don't, that is relevant when you go about answering the question, who do you think you are? So here's another reason why it's important to be able to answer the question, "Who do you think you are?" in a consistent, and compelling way. So take a look at this image. I'm just going to leave it up there for a second for you to really look at. Okay, what the heck is going on there? You've got this guy on a horse with some weird kind of blanket on it. You've got this young girl in the middle of nowhere, sitting on a couch, I guess. And there's nothing in this image that makes any obvious sense, right? Well, I guarantee you that as you were looking at that image, you were trying to figure it out because human beings are not good at having vacuums of information. We're not good at being able to look at something and not understand what it is. Our curiosity drives us to try to put meaning, trying to understand why this guy's riding around on a horse. Why is this little girl out there in the middle of the winter? Why? What is going on? And so it's important for us to remember that when we don't say anything, people, our employees, our customers, they're going to start filling in the blanks because they have to. If we don't answer the question, who do you think you are, for them, then they're going to do it for themselves. Or worst case, your competitors are going to do it. And I guarantee you that neither your competitors nor your customers or your employees will answer that question on their own accurately if you don't help them along the way. So in the United States, back in the late 60s, early 70s, and I'm totally dating myself here, there is this program called Bewitched. It was about this beautiful young woman who happened to be a good witch, but she was trying desperately to live a mortal life with the man she loved, a mortal named Darren. I was obsessed with this program as a child. Obsessed. I was the youngest of all the cousins I had on both sides of the family, and by a lot, actually. And when they would tease me, I would apparently close my eyes and wiggle my nose, which is what the character on the show did, hoping they would disappear. To this day, they still tease me about it. Anyway, there was a character on the show named Larry Tate, and he owned an advertising agency that Samantha the witch's husband, Darren, worked for. Stick with me here. There is a point. Larry Tate was the original yes man. Whenever Darren was presenting an idea or a concept for an ad campaign, Larry would look at the client, and try to understand what he's thinking, and he would always get it wrong. He would always think that the client wasn't liking the idea, and he would say, "Darren, I can't believe you would put something like that in front of our client." And meanwhile, the client would say, "Well, actually, I kind of like it. Darren, what I meant was, I can't believe why you didn't put something like this in front of our clients sooner. It's so good." He was completely, again, the original yes man, and lost all credibility he never had to begin with. Okay, what's my point? I do have one. So, authenticity in your messaging is such an important element. It is a must nowadays. There's a study done, I believe, in the United States around millennials, and they are becoming more and more, they're bigger drivers every day in our culture and in our businesses. The oldest millennials are now turning 40. They're becoming managers. Some of you might be millennials. They're becoming customers. And here's what's relevant: 90%, 91% of them will change vendors, change companies from whom they buy, if they do not believe that the company shares their values. And they're going to treat their vendors the same way they treat the way they spend their own money. And for employees, 62% of them will take a pay cut and change jobs if they don't respect the company they work for, if, again, their values do not align with the values of the company. So, and this is going to be very important when we go about thinking about how to attract and retain the very best talent. So there's something about authenticity that just, inauthenticity rather, that just feels dirty. And we really have to fight that, because in order to answer the question, who do you think you are, in a credible way, it has to come from an authentic place. So let me tell you another story. So here's another reason why I think we have trouble answering the question, who do you think you are, sometimes? And that is, we forget what we're really selling. Stick with me here. Um, I have a friend. I'm going to call her Mary. We've been friends for many, 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 many years, and she used to drive this old Toyota station wagony kind of thing, and she got it from her mother. Her mother had driven it for, I don't know, tens of thousands of miles, and she continued to drive it for tens of thousands of miles. I mean, it was ridiculous how long she kept this car. But finally, it was time to get a new car. So she and I went to one of the auto shows that was coming through town, and we looked at a lot of different ones, and we picked out a nice, safe Volvo for her. One of the smaller ones. I don't remember exactly what the model is, but we picked out a nice Volvo for her, and she drove that for a number of years, and a couple of years, not many, and we really liked it. Well, we were having lunch one day, and she says, "Oh, by the way, I got a new car." "Really? What did you get?" "Oh," she says, "I got a Mercedes." "Really? What happened to the Volvo?" "Well, It was making this noise, and I took it to the mechanics. They really couldn't figure out what it was. So I thought, you know what? I'm not going to waste my time. I'm just going to get a new one. I said, "Oh, really? So why did you get a Mercedes and not another Volvo?" And she says, "Well, I kind of wanted these features." And she lists off a number of features. And I said, "Oh, that's interesting. I know that Ford and Kia and Hyundai have cars that have those same features. And did you look at any of those?" "Oh, do they?" "No, I had no idea." All right. So Mary was not buying a car. She was buying something that demonstrated, that rewarded herself for all the years of hard work, all the years of sacrifice and discipline. And she finally was at a place in her life where, you know what, she could treat herself. And I am very glad she did. But she did not buy a car. She bought a reward. She bought something that made her feel good. So, what about you? What is it that you're really selling? As human beings, we make decisions two ways. We make them analytically and emotionally. Every decision, if you look deep enough, even the shirt you wear, there's an emotional and an analytical element to it. So it's important that when you go about answering the question, "Who do you think you are?" that you keep that top of mind. You have to answer the question in the context of both the analytical and the emotional. So let me give you some examples. I once talked to this guy who ran a trade association for, I think, accountants. And he said to me, "Oh, I'm so worried. We've got to do something. Membership is falling. People aren't coming to our events anymore. People are retiring, and younger professionals aren't joining. They're not coming to our events." I said, "Well," and this was obviously before the pandemic when you could go to events. And I said, "So what is the main benefit of your organization? What is it?" He says, "Well, the events." No, that is not the main benefit of the organization. I also had a friend that moved to an organization, a startup that sold technology for workplace optimization. So, helping big companies decide how much office space they should have, how much conference rooms they should have, how many hot desks they should have, things like that. And I went to their website, and he asked me to look at the website. I went to the website, and it was all about the technical requirements of all this, how the software works, how the hardware works. It was all about the details of what it did. And no, that is not what they were selling. They were not selling technology. They were not selling equipment. And the third example is a friend of mine's husband was created this app as part of the Salesforce.com marketplace. And it was an app that would let small, we call them mom and pop vendors or small companies, service companies, send real time alerts to their customers about when their mechanic, or I'm sorry, when their plumber or the electrician, when they will show up, just like the large corporations do. And again, he was focusing on the fact that it gave real-time notifications. But that is not what he was selling either. So what were they selling? Well, in the case of the professional organization, they were selling access to information about new jobs. They were selling the potential for new business relationships. They were selling the opportunity to find a mentor. They were selling things that sure started at the events, but it wasn't about the events. It was about the benefit that the events brought. Um, the the um, the workspace optimization folks, they were selling credibility to the people who were buying those systems. Typically were folks that came up from the ranks. They might have started right out of school as even a janitor, and then over the years they worked themselves up. They typically didn't have fancy degrees, but they were able to show some credibility when they could have the data behind their decisions, or what they wanted when they went to ask senior management for funding. They had the credibility to get done what they wanted to do. And then finally, that Salesforce.com app, that was selling the ability to compete with the big folks. So if I'm a small plumber and there's a large chain, I can now compete with them a lot more easily because I have this technology. So it's critically important that we remember what we're really selling. And sometimes that's hard to do. So a recap so far is we forget what others don't know. Authenticity really matters, and we have to get crystal clear on what it is we're selling. Okay, so what's my point? Well, my point is you can do this. You have to do it, and here's how. First of all, start by asking questions of yourself, asking questions of who are your customers? Who are your employees? What are they struggling with now? When do they need what you're offering most? Where are they finding the most challenges and how can you help? And if you look carefully, you'll see a pattern here of who, what, when, where, how. That's a device that a lot of journalists use to answer questions early on, early on in a topic. So think about all the questions you can ask. Now, this again goes to employees. You have to ask about what is important to them. What would make them, what's important to them for their employers to have? What's important for them for their careers? What's important for them in a workplace? Sometimes it's not a lot of fancy dinners and things like that. Sometimes it's just being respected. You can't just assume you know. And then another thing you should do is think about your competitors. Ask questions about them, what it is they're doing. How are they positioning themselves? Because positioning, if you think about the word, positioning is all about um, putting yourself in a place relative to someone else. And if you're going to position yourself relative to your competitors, you need to know where they are and where they're coming from. The next step is to build what I call a messaging framework. And this answers a few really important questions. So, why is what you do important? Why is it important to you? Why do you care? And most importantly, why should anybody else care about what you do? And what is it you do? What is it you actually do to deliver on that message? What's a one sentence description of who you are? That's a lot harder to find, but you can do it if you spend some time thinking about it. And then how do you do that differently than everybody else in a way that is relevant and competitively differentiated? Now, things like superior customer service don't cut it. That's because most organizations, most of your competitors can legitimately or at least potentially claim excellent customer service as a differentiation. So, what is it that you do differently that nobody else does? That is critical to figuring out how to answer the question, who do you think you are? And then as a brand, what are your proof how does your brand come to life? What are the personality attributes that you would assign to your brand if your brand were a person? All right, well, I know that's really all well and good, but let me give you a real world example. Now, this is a organization, it's a global not for profit organization based in Boston, Massachusetts, where I am, that we've worked with. And normally, right now, I would tell you what they do and who they are, but we're going to do it a little differently because, the whole point is answering these questions of why, what, how, and what's the way that a brand comes to life. So let's start with leading cities and their why. This is why they do what they do and why it's important. They exist to unleash the potential of the world's cities to drive resilience and sustainability for all. That is their why. That's why they get up in the morning. That's why their employees get up in the morning. That's why they care, and that's why they want people to care. All right, so let's talk about their what. So, what is it that leading cities does? Well, leading cities connects cities across the globe with the innovations that solve our most pressing challenges. All right, now how do they do that differently than everybody else? Well, first of all, they have cultivated a global network of forward thinkers from the public, private, academic, and not for profit sectors. Their proof point to that is the program they call Leading Cities Member Network. Another relevant and competitively differentiated approach they have is nurturing and supporting the most promising startups and connecting them with the cities ready to benefit from their work. And their proof points for that is an accelerator program called Acela City and Acela Growth. And then finally, the way they do that, the way they connect cities across the globe in a way that nobody else does, is through advanced research, emerging trends, and techniques that are delivered through consulting services from global experts. And that is their proof point there is leading consulting. So, as a brand, though, what are their personality attributes? Well, we've determined that their attributes were measured. They believe that a methodical approach to innovation brings about the most transformative change. They're supportive. We work to collaboratively mitigate frustrations inherent to driving ambitious change. They're bold. They drive to bring about resilience and prosperity in a way that's undaunted. And they are hopeful. We see a future in which cities are vibrant centers of sustainability, equity, and inclusion. So if somebody asks the question to leading cities, who do you think you are? Here's how they answer. Leading Cities is a global nonprofit who believes that we can drive resilience and sustainable change for all by unleashing the potential of the world's cities. We connect cities across the globe with innovations that solve our most pressing challenges. We do that by cultivating a global network of forward thinkers, nurturing and supporting the most promising startups, and delivering advanced research and emerging trends from global experts. And we do that in a way that is measured, supportive, bold, and hopeful. So, to recap, first of all, you have to ask a lot of questions. Ask them of yourselves, ask them of your employees, ask them about your competitors. And then you have to build your messaging framework. You have to think about what you do is important. What do you do exactly and how do you do it differently than anyone else? And finally, if your brand were a person, how would you describe it? What are the adjectives you would use? So that's my presentation. That's my thoughts on answering the question, who do you think you are? Now, as I mentioned, if we were together physically in the same room, now is when I would take some questions, which I love doing. And we can't do that now. So if you go to message builders, message.builders/quantum, you'll find a page where you can get a PDF of this presentation. You can get a way to ask me questions, and you can find me on LinkedIn. And I certainly encourage you to connect with me on LinkedIn. So don't be afraid to ask some questions. You can even set up a time to talk with me, just to answer questions one-on-one, no sales pitch. Yeah, that's it. Thank you for watching this presentation. I hope it was helpful, and enjoy the rest of this event. Take care.